the late and great Grandpa Jones, Archie Campbell. Jim and I would hang around these legends. And what was so unique about...
They were the golden boys of country comedy. Jim and John Hager, who were identical, blonde, and always in rhythm, became the comedy pair who could make America laugh with just a wink and a one-liner. On Hee Haw, their matching clothes and rapid harmonies made them instantly recognizable as television celebrities who felt like family in living rooms across the country. For fans, the Hager brothers were more than just performers. They were wholesome, hilarious, and impossible not to adore. However, the picture-perfect performance was accompanied by shadows that the cameras never captured, because beneath those smiles were two guys who, while connected at the hip on stage, faced quite different challenges off it. Their lives appeared identical on the outside, but the truth was far more complicated. Fame provided them with everything they desired: money, attention, and recognition in television history. However, it also confined them to a role from which they could never really escape. When the curtain fell, the brothers were left with a dilemma that bothers many entertainers. Who am I when I'm not in the spotlight? This is the untold story of Jim and John Hager, how two inseparable Illinois brothers became household celebrities, how celebrities diverted their paths, and how tragedy brought their narrative to a devastating conclusion. Because what happened after Hee Haw was more than just the loss of a career. It was the dismantling of a fraternity that the world believed could never be shattered. Long before the stage lights and cameras appeared, Jim and John's story began in a way that seemed almost script-like. The twins were not born famous or into a musical family. On August 30th, 1941, two identical boys were born in Chicago and adopted within weeks of their birth by a Methodist clergyman and his wife. That choice paved the way for everything that followed. Growing up in Park Ridge, Illinois, the Hager boys had a quiet, stable childhood, defined by small-town ideals. Their adoptive parents reared them with discipline, faith, and a strong feeling of community. The twins were inseparable, so similar that even their teachers had to think twice before calling on them in class. People were confused by more than simply their appearance. It was their beat. They moved the same, laughed the same, and even spoke in a way that made it appear as if one thought was split between two voices. Music provided their first true connection to the outside world. By the age of 11, they were harmonizing in church choruses, playing borrowed guitars. The boys practiced late into the night, sure that if they could only get the time right, they'd have something unique. What began as innocent backyard performances quickly progressed into ambition. The Hager twins did not simply dream about singing for fun. They dreamed of making it big, and that desire would take them far beyond the Midwest. By their late teens, the Hager twins realized that small-town Illinois could not contain their ambitions. With nothing except guitars, determination, and a bag full of identical costumes, they packed up and traveled west. California was the land of opportunity, where aspirations might be tested or destroyed. They enrolled in a performing arts college, honing their skills while working whatever jobs would pay the bills. The twins did it all, serving tables, transporting equipment, and even taking on minor roles in amateur theater. It wasn't glamorous, but it kept them connected to the world they wished to enter. Their genuine turning point did not occur at school or at an audition. It came from a smoky Los Angeles bar on what appeared to be an ordinary night. The twins were playing one of their sets, a little country, a little comedy, and a little Everly Brothers harmony, when someone in the audience noticed. That person was part of Buck Owens' group. Owens, himself a rising star in country music, had a knack for detecting talent, and the Hager twins possessed something that couldn't be faked: charm. They were raw, honest, and completely in tune, making it impossible not to watch them. Jim and John soon began acting as backing vocalists and guitarists for Owens's gigs. It wasn't famous yet, but it was a start, and the twins were content just being a part of that environment. The spotlight was coming close. In the late 1960s, television was looking for new content. Comedy variety shows dominated primetime, but CBS management wanted a version that resonated to middle America. one with rural roots, cheesy humor, and lots of music. That notion became Hee Haw, a down-home, fast-paced comedic hour that combined sketches, slapstick, and twang in an unusual package. Buck Owens was chosen as co-host alongside Roy Clark, and when producers searched for new country talent to fill out the cast, Owens knew who to recommend. "Get the Hager Twins," he commanded them. Jim and John's lives were permanently transformed at that moment. Audiences couldn't get enough of them since they first appeared on stage in 1969. With their blonde bangs, identical outfits, and beautiful harmonies, the twins quickly became fan favorites. They weren't just vocalists, they were performers. Whether they appeared in the iconic cornfield sketches or traded jokes with the rest of the cast, their timing was impeccable. Their effortless banter and mirror image presence set them out even in a cast full of larger-than-life characters. The response was quick. Thousands of pieces of fan mail were received. Teenagers plastered their faces on bedroom walls. Women swooned. Children imitated their acts, and Middle America welcomed them like family. To television audiences, the Hager Twins were the ideal double act. Wholesome, hilarious, and endlessly charming. They seemed to have everything someone could want. However, as they ascended higher, the fissures became more visible, because being everyone's favorite twins brought pressures that the audience never witnessed. On television, the Hager Twins appeared effortless. Every punchline landed, every harmony harmonized, and every act flowed as naturally as breathing. But what the audience never saw was how meticulously manufactured that picture was. The creators of Hee Haw knew exactly what they wanted from Jim and John: squeaky clean charm, easy jokes, and lots of matching clothes. The formula worked, but it gave the brothers little room to spread their wings. Both were brilliant musicians and songwriters, but their own work was rarely showcased. Instead, they were urged to laugh, sing famous songs, and repeat the same rhythms week after week. For John, the attention was thrilling. He leaned into it, cracking jokes off camera and relishing the attention that came with celebrity. But Jim was different. He became quieter and more introspective, and the need to always be on started to weigh hard on him. Friends later recounted how he frequently withdrew after lengthy filming sessions, skipping gatherings and choosing solitude over celebration. Nonetheless, when the cameras rolled, he jumped straight back into character, laughing, singing, and delivering lines with impeccable timing. He wore the mask admirably, but it came with a cost. The twins were viewed as inseparable, but behind the scenes, they were beginning to deal with fame in quite different ways. The world adored their similarities. In actuality, their differences were slowly driving them apart. As the seasons of Hee Haw progressed, the Hager Twins' public image remained unchanged. Two identical jokesters with guitars in hand and mischief in their eyes. But off stage, their paths were gradually separating. John, ever the extrovert, embraced the life fame had given him. He thrived on the adrenaline of major cities and late-night parties, whether in Nashville clubs or Los Angeles hotspots. He was affable and charismatic, the twin who could stroll into any room and make everyone laugh within minutes. Rumors circulated about his dating life, including tales of starlets, flings, and short-lived romances that cemented his status as the more adventurous brother. Jim, meantime, was retreating in the opposite way. While John sought out loudness, Jim sought silence. He became increasingly introverted, preferring evenings alone with his guitar to parties or industry events. Those around him began to notice changes, extended silences, abrupt mood fluctuations, and a heaviness in his demeanor. Some suspected he was suffering from depression long before it was officially publicized, while others discreetly noted prescription medicines that muted his spark. Neither brother discussed it publicly. Their connection remained solid, but their approach to fame had changed. To the crowd, they appeared to be in perfect harmony. In truth, the distance between them was increasing. For nearly 25 years, Hee Haw had provided Jim and John with structure, purpose, and a steady spotlight. However, when the show's syndicated run ended in 1993, the laughter that had sustained them for decades came to an abrupt halt. With it, the twins found themselves in new territory. At first, they sought to maintain the momentum, They scheduled appearances at state fairs, small-town festivals, and charitable events. They even made a gospel CD, a personal ambition they'd had for years. However, without the Hee Haw machine to promote them week after week, the numbers thinned, the fan mail slowed. The energy that felt automatic before had to be chased. John approached the shift with zealous ambition. He offered television ideas, looked into acting opportunities, and even dabbled in Christian broadcasting. But every door that had previously opened so effortlessly suddenly seemed to close before he could go through. The entertainment industry has moved on, and it was not waiting for the Hager twins to keep up. Jim faced a more difficult deterioration. Without the continual diversion of rehearsals and filming, he was forced to confront feelings he had buried for years. Friends noted his increasing seclusion. He stopped answering phones, skipped parties, and performed less regularly, even when John pressed him to keep active. They were still brothers and greatest friends, but the smooth rhythm they'd enjoyed on stage no longer felt natural. The question of what happens next lingered, and neither twin appeared to have an explanation. On television, the Hager twins were portrayed as perpetual bachelors, attractive, cheerful, and always just out of reach. Their identical looks and boyish charm made them heartthrobs, and the show leaned heavily on that image. But away from the cameras, their romantic lives portrayed a very different narrative. John, the more boisterous twin, couldn't seem to settle. He dated frequently, sometimes casually, sometimes seriously, but always with a distance. Industry insiders talked about flings with fellow artists and quiet romances that never made news. He valued friendship but avoided commitment, as if he realized that a life in the spotlight left little opportunity for permanency. His heart was generous, yet guarded, and his relationships reflected this. Jim's tale was nearly the opposite. He had fewer romantic relationships, but when he did, he loved intensely. In the late 1980s, he met a woman at a charity event who dramatically transformed him. She wasn't famous or in the industry, but to Jim, she was everything. Friends saw him truly happy for a brief while, discussing marriage and having a life outside of the stage. But tragedy struck when she died suddenly. Some claim it was due to illness, while others blame a car accident. Jim hardly mentioned it again. After she died, something inside him shut down. He never went on another significant date or tried to replace what he had lost. For John, romance was transitory. For Jim, it had become impossible. To the outside world, they were still the happy, carefree twins from Hee Haw. However, their love lives were formed less by desire and more by heartbreak, a loneliness that even brothers couldn't completely remove. By the mid-2000s, the Hager twins had grown out of their Hee Haw days. They continued to perform occasionally, usually at nostalgia shows, tiny festivals, and local events, but the limelight had dimmed. Their matching blonde hair had become gray. Their audiences were fewer, and their enthusiasm was slower. For John, it was just the passage of time. Jim was dealing with something much more serious. Those closest to him noticed the indications. His flame was dimming. Long silences have replaced the rapid humor that used to carry entire skits. He still smiled for admirers and sang when the curtain raised. But behind the scenes, he appeared exhausted in a way that no rest could cure. Whispers spread about his despair, prescriptions that dulled rather than healed, and the isolation that deepened with each passing year. On May 1st, 2008, the stillness became permanent. Jim Hager was discovered dead in his Nashville residence. He was 66 years old. The cause was cited as an apparent heart attack, but friends suspected it was more than that. A lifetime of secret struggles finally catching up with him. For John, the loss was devastating. They'd been together for 66 years, through every high, low, joke, and tragedy. And for the first time, John was forced to confront life alone. The brother who had always finished his sentences was gone, and nothing could have prepared him for the silence that followed. After Jim died in 2008, John Hager was never the same. For decades, the twins were seen as a unit, with two voices, two grins, and a single personality. But now, for the first time in his life, John was forced to confront the world as just John, and the weight of that was intolerable. Friends attempted to contact him, but he retreated. Invitations to play, appear at reunions, and even give interviews were all declined. John would gently add, "I don't know how to be half of anything." Everything at home remained unchanged. Jim's guitar remained on its stand. Their theatrical outfits hung in the closet, untouched. Even the breakfast table was still set for two, as if John was saving room for a sibling who could walk in at any time. The anguish had settled deep in his bones. Although physicians indicated his health was steady, friends witnessed how rapidly he faded. He appeared worn and sad, like a man who had already said his goodbyes. Less than a year later, on January 9, 2009, John Hager died in his sleep at the age of 67. Some described it as a heart condition. Others just described it as a broken heart. The Hager twins entered the world side by side, amused millions, and left practically unchanged. Their legacy was not limited to humor or music. It was about loyalty, brotherhood, and an unbreakable relationship between two men who would never let the world separate them. And that is the genuine account of what happened to the Hager twins following Hee Haw. If you found their trip as emotional as we did, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell symbol to never miss another story of the stars you thought you knew.